There are days when being a Golden State Warriors fan feels like riding a roller coaster without a seatbelt. And today was one of those days where the bottom completely fell out. The offseason has been filled with mixed emotions, uncertainty, and what felt like a few glimpses of hope here and there. But today's developments regarding Jonathan Kuminga, man, that hit different. We're not just talking about a player negotiating his contract. We're looking at a young talent potentially shutting the door on the franchise that helped mold him and doing it right in the face of ownership. The whole situation is leaving fans frustrated, confused, and wondering how it got to this point so fast. Let's rewind a bit. Just a day ago, we heard the news that Kuminga turned down a $75 million extension over 3 years. And at first, the excuse that floated around was that he didn't like the team option included in the deal. Understandable, right? Players want security. But when you look deeper, it starts to become clear that it's not really about the contract structure. It's about Kuminga's willingness, or lack thereof, to continue his journey in Golden State. And that's where things start to spiral. Word came out that Joe Lacob, the owner of the Warriors, personally flew out to Miami just to have a face-to-face with Kuminga about this exact situation. That alone says a lot. You don't hop on a plane and cross the country unless the situation is serious. In that meeting, Lacob reportedly asked Kuminga, "Do you want to be here?" And Kuminga, instead of giving a direct answer, flipped the question right back. "Do you want me here?" Now think about that for a second. That's not a yes, that's not a no. That's someone putting the ball in your court while already having one foot out the door. That kind of interaction tells you everything you need to know. And if that wasn't enough, it's been revealed that the only thing keeping Kuminga from signing his qualifying offer or walking away completely is the respect he still has for Lacob as a person. Not for the franchise, not for the coaching staff, not even for the team's long-term vision, just the owner himself. That's a huge problem, because now the Warriors are stuck between keeping a young star who doesn't want to be here or trading him for less than his full value just to move on. It's a lose-lose scenario that should have been handled way earlier. Honestly, once that conversation in Miami happened, alarms should have gone off in the front office. Phones should have been ringing around the clock. You can't sit on a player who's made it clear he doesn't want to be part of your future. Not unless you're ready to lose him for nothing when his contract runs out. What makes this even harder to digest is the idea that Kuminga sees himself as an all-star in the very near future. He's not looking to play second or third fiddle anymore. He believes he's ready to lead, and that's not something Golden State is in a position to offer right now. Not with Steph still at the helm. Not with Draymond and Klay still very much part of the equation. So for Kuminga, waiting around for a bigger role just doesn't make sense. He wants to be the guy, and he believes that moment is coming, just not in the Bay. And while some might say, well, maybe his market isn't that hot, let's be honest, we've seen enough flashes from him to know he's got real value. Maybe not on a superstar level, but as a young, explosive forward with upside, plenty of teams would love to have him. Just look what happened with Josh Giddey. The Thunder clearly saw cornerstone potential in him and didn't hesitate to lock him down. Giddey's market value was clear, and he got paid. Meanwhile, Kuminga's still waiting, but not because the offers aren't there. It's because he's pushing for the right fit, not just the biggest bag. From what we've heard, there are a handful of teams showing real interest. The Kings have been sniffing around. The Suns, too. Miami's name keeps popping up. Even Chicago's come up in conversations. But how far those talks have gone, or how serious they really are, is anyone's guess. That's the thing about the NBA. Timing is everything. A team might not pull the trigger now, but come training camp or the first week of the preseason, minds can change fast. All it takes is one injury, one chemistry issue, and suddenly a team's willing to give up a lot more than they were a month ago. That's why this next stretch, from now through mid-October, is going to be crucial. If the Warriors want to make a move, they need to start thinking creatively. Not just dumping Kuminga for whatever's out there, but finding the right situation that brings back value, fits their system, and keeps them competitive in a tough Western Conference. The last thing this team needs is another half-baked trade that looks good on paper but doesn't work on the court. Look at Miami, for example. They're always going to be careful with their roster. Pat Riley isn't going to blow things up for a young player unless he sees serious potential. But he also knows how to develop talent. The Heat have a track record of turning overlooked players into solid contributors. Max Struss, Caleb Martin, even Dion Waiters once upon a time. They know how to build guys up. So a team like that might offer a protected first-rounder and a few young prospects, but they're not going to overpay. They value flexibility more than anything, especially with free agency always looming. Then you've got the Atlanta Hawks, a team that's clearly in win-now mode. They want to keep Trae Young happy and build a roster around him that can actually make a deep playoff run. That's where a player like Kuminga comes in. He could be that missing piece, the athletic, versatile forward who can slide between the 3 and the 4, attack the rim, stretch the floor, and bring defensive intensity. Picture a lineup with Trae at the 1, Kuminga at the 3, maybe Porzingis at the 5, and suddenly you've got something really interesting. Add a solid 2 guard and a floor spacing 4, and you're talking about a legit playoff team. Atlanta could be a perfect fit, and if they've got any draft picks left to play with, especially ones in the near future, they could easily make the kind of offer that would get the Warriors to listen. But again, that depends on how aggressive they want to be. If they think Kuminga is the guy to push them over the top, they might pull the trigger. If not, maybe they wait it out. But it's one of those outside-the-box scenarios that actually makes sense. Now, looking at the Bulls, it's a bit murkier. Chicago's got cap space, they've got some movable pieces, and they've got incentive to shake things up. But they're also not known for making bold, forward-thinking moves. If they were to get involved, it might be as part of a bigger multi-team deal where they help facilitate a move and pick up a player or two in return. That said, they do have players who could interest Golden State. Guys like Vucevic, Kevin Huerter, maybe even Kobe White, depending on how the front office sees his fit alongside Josh Giddey and whatever else they're building. If the Bulls want to retool and the Warriors want pieces that contribute now, there's a possible path there. As for the Kings and Suns, they're still lingering around the edges of this conversation. Sacramento doesn't have a ton to offer unless they're willing to move off of someone like DeMar DeRozan, who could actually make some sense for the Warriors. He's still producing, still smart, and no longer needs to be the guy. He could easily slide into a veteran leadership role, score efficiently, and support Steph without stepping on toes. He'd bring experience, playoff pedigree, and a calm presence to a team that desperately needs direction after this rocky summer. Then there's Phoenix. And while we've heard names like Royce O'Neal, Nick Richards, Ryan Dunn thrown around, along with a couple of second-rounders, that just doesn't move the needle enough for Golden State. Unless the Suns can rope in a third team or sweeten the deal with another young piece, it's hard to see the Warriors being satisfied with that return. Depth is important, sure, but depth without fit, that just adds to the confusion that already exists on this roster. And that brings us back to Kuminga, because whether the front office wants to admit it or not, this whole situation is the result of failing to recognize how quickly the landscape has shifted. The Warriors have been so used to having internal development happen quietly, guys learning behind legends, biding their time, but Kuminga was never wired for that kind of waiting game. He wants to be in the spotlight now, and honestly, he's earned the right to believe he deserves more. But instead of leaning into that and figuring out how to make it work, the franchise kept pushing a wait-your-turn message that clearly didn't sit right with him. And now, they're dealing with the consequences. The relationship between Kuminga and the coaching staff hasn't exactly been smooth either. There's been talk behind the scenes that he's grown frustrated with how he's being used, and not just in terms of minutes. It's the lack of a clearly defined role. One night, he's starting, the next he's buried in the rotation. That kind of instability messes with a young player's confidence, especially one who believes he should be getting 25 to 30 minutes a night to develop. So when people say it's about money or contracts, they're missing the real issue. This is about belief, or the lack thereof, and Kuminga doesn't feel like the organization sees him as a foundational piece. Not the way he wants to be seen. Not the way Giddey was embraced in Oklahoma City. Not the way other teams are treating their young stars. Which is why it's no surprise he's reportedly holding out in hopes of a sign-in trade. He doesn't want to sign that qualifying offer and just walk next summer. He wants out now, on his terms, and he wants to go to a team that will let him spread his wings. And truthfully, you can't blame him for that. If he signs the qualifying offer and plays out the season with the Warriors, he risks everything. He gets hurt, his value drops. He gets benched, his value drops. He has one off month, teams start questioning his ceiling. That's why this next move is so critical for both sides. The Warriors need to move him before the season starts, not after. Because once training camp begins and rotations start getting set, the window to get maximum value shrinks fast. You can already feel the tension building. The fans are restless. The locker room is probably tense. And it's not just because of Kuminga. It's because this situation has become symbolic of a deeper issue with the roster construction and direction. Golden State used to be ahead of the curve, always one move ahead of the league. Now, they're reacting, playing catch-up, trying to plug holes instead of building towards something cohesive. That's not how dynasties sustain themselves. That's how they fall apart. And when you take a step back and look at the pieces they've brought in recently, you start to see the disconnect. Buddy Hield is a sniper, but not a creator. Moses Moody has moments, but he hasn't taken that leap. Pods is intriguing, but still a work in progress. Seth Curry brings shooting, but not size. Al Horford brings experience, but not youth. It's a collection of names that feel more like panic signings than strategic fits. The roster lacks identity. It's a jigsaw puzzle where the pieces just don't click, and adding Kuminga's uncertainty on top of that creates even more chaos. If you're Joe Lacob, you have to be looking at this roster and asking some hard questions. Are we building around Steph one last time, or are we trying to blend the old guard with the next wave? Because you can't do both unless you have a right infrastructure, and right now, the Warriors don't. The championship core is aging. The young guys are restless, and the in-between pieces aren't good enough to bridge the gap. So instead of dragging this out, it's time to make a decision. Pick a direction and go all in. Kuminga's trade value might not be at its absolute peak, but it's still strong enough to get meaningful pieces in return, especially if you bring in a third team. There are always teams looking for a young forward with upside, especially one with the physical tools Kuminga has. Explosiveness, length, raw strength. You don't find that combination every day. And with the right coaching and consistent usage, he could absolutely become a two-way problem in this league. That's what makes this so frustrating. It's not that Kuminga doesn't have value. It's that Golden State never truly committed to finding out what he could become in their system. They drafted him high, talked him up, but then never fully gave him the leash. Before we continue, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Dubs updates. Let's keep going. The Bay Area is buzzing with whispers, and though nothing is official, the rumor mill is already in overdrive. Could it really be happening? Could the Golden State Warriors, the franchise that redefined modern basketball with its devotion to spacing and shooting, be on the verge of adding one of the most lethal European marksmen of the last decade? Sources close to the situation hint that LAURI Markkanen, Finland's Nordic Thunder, and the undeniable star of the most recent Eurobasket, may be preparing to don the blue and gold jersey. Markkanen's name has long been associated with fluid offensive play and a three-point shot that seems almost custom-built for today's NBA. His breakout international performances only added more weight to the argument. Here is a 7-footer who doesn't just stretch the floor, he burns it to the ground. During Eurobasket, fans marveled as he rained triples with ease, gliding into pull-ups and corner shots that seemed impossible for a player his size. It wasn't just the scoring totals that caught attention. It was the confidence, the swagger, the sense that every possession ran through him. For the Warriors, a franchise built around the gravitational pull of Stephen Curry, the fit feels almost too perfect. Imagine defenses scrambling not just to chase Curry around screens, but to account for a sharpshooting giant waiting in the wings. The ripple effect could transform Golden State's spacing into a nightmare puzzle for opponents. Do you collapse on drives and risk Markkanen's clean look from deep, or stretch thin and allow Curry to carve you apart? Draymond Green, so often the hub of the Warriors' passing wizardry, would find yet another weapon to exploit. Of course, there are doubts. This is, for now, only a murmur echoing through front offices and social media threads. Salary cap realities, trade pieces, and long-term planning all stand as obstacles. But if history has shown anything, it's that Golden State thrives when it dares to innovate. Adding Markkanen would not be just another move. It would be a declaration, a reminder that the dynasty isn't ready to fade quietly. For now, the Bay Area waits. The idea of Nordic Thunder lighting up Chase Center from beyond the arc is only speculation. But sometimes, speculation is enough to ignite hope and fear. If the rumor proves true, the Warriors' firepower could reach a level the league hasn't seen before. And somewhere in the distance, you can almost hear the sound of nets snapping. Stay updated exclusively with the latest Dub Nation news. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to keep getting daily updates on the Warriors. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your input is essential for the Dubs community. Stay tuned for the next video.